So welcome to one of Arcade Zone's 2 games, only made 2. They were both beat-em-ups, and this is the one they consider their magnum opus. And from a presentation standpoint, it's certainly not hard to see why. This music is pretty kick-ass. There are high production values all around, including big, beautiful sprites. There are cutscenes and character dialogue. The game also moves very fast. Now, I have no illusions of it being the fastest beat-em-up, but it is a lot faster than, say, Final Fight or even Streets of Rage, assuming you're talking about the first and second ones. The game does take heavy inspiration from the Punisher beat-em-up, as you can probably tell by the grab, and the way it looks, and how we hurt enemies with it. There are also a lot of guns lying around, but the guns don't really work the same way as the Punisher's pistol. We do have to be perfectly lined up with the enemy to use the guns here. And while usually in beat-em-ups, getting a gun is a brief ascent into easy mode, here it's more of a lateral movement. Yeah, the guns deal more damage, but it takes a while to shoot them. I'm trying not to think about how cool it is that that lamppost keeps flickering, but there's a lot of neat environmental graphical touches like that add to the atmosphere. If there's one thing this game is rich in, it's atmosphere, which is surprising for an SNES era beat-em-up. There's also a lot of diversity in the environments, but it's a slow-moving diversity. You're not going to be zipping from place to place like, oh, now you're in a jungle, now you're in a desert. That will happen. You'll see a jungle and a desert, but slowly. You make your way through each location at a rather realistic pace, is what I'm saying. Actually, I'm not sure it's a desert. You know what? You'll find out for yourself when you play it, if you play it. Now up here is one of the more interesting challenges that the levels present. By this point, the game assumes that you're used to these knife enemies. They have a basic forward thrust that reaches farther than your punch, but you just go around them and grab them to get rid of them, right? Pretty simple. You're all good with the knife enemies now. And hopefully you also learn that you can hurt other enemies by grabbing someone and then smacking them into the enemy of your choice, thus getting rid of the enemy in your hand and any enemies in front of you at the same time. Got all that? Okay, good. Welcome to the truck. The truck has a significant amount of health, and we can't progress the screen until it's destroyed. The easiest way to destroy it is with shotgun rounds, but of course those aren't in much abundance. So, we need to find a way to destroy it while we're being hit by all these enemies. They spawn from both the left and right sides of the truck, so there's no real safe area. The only solution is to, as was said, juggle the enemies and fight the truck at the same time. Now when you do have a shotgun, you can clear out the right side of the screen and start firing from there. Hopefully you'll be able to push the enemies back enough that it won't be too much of an issue, and most of your shots will actually hit the truck. But when a gun isn't handy, I find there are two more valid options. One is that when the enemies spawn, you lead them upward away from the truck and then beat them. Then after they're gone, quickly descend downward and deliver a few punches to the truck, like I just did. The second method is that you grab the enemy, run over to the truck, and punch the enemy and the truck at the same time, as you had been doing with other enemies at this point. And this is kind of an interesting mechanic, because in a lot of beat-em-ups you can throw enemies into other enemies to hurt them, but you don't get to grab an enemy and then just to beat another enemy with him. Except in this game. In this game you totally get to do that. In fact, I would go so far as to say it's essential to do that. You can defeat the enemies through other methods such as jump kicks and normal punches if you're really patient. But it's not just defeating the enemies that's the issue, there's also a time limit. And the game heavily punishes you for being overly methodical. The time limit may seem lenient. I mean, that's a whole 8 minutes we've got, right? But that's not a lot of time at all. These levels can be rather long. So you need to find out the most efficient way to take care of enemies, and by far the most efficient method is to beat enemies with other enemies. It's as simple as that. So here's an enemy type we saw briefly earlier. Just some guys with guns. They have a basic kick as their melee combo, but your fist reaches farther than that. Their main weapon of choice, though, is not their feet, it is their gun. And it fires straight across in a straight line, easy to get around. Just move up or down, and then come down on top of them to grab them. Something that bears saying and stressing greatly is that constant movement is a necessity. Because the enemies are never just on one side of you, and if you manage to get all the enemies on one side of you, they will quickly change that for you. Do not worry about that, my friend. If you thought the AI in, say, Tekken Devil Within was ruthless in the way they zipped around and circled you, well, welcome to Iron Commando, which has the most zip-happy AI I've ever seen in a beat-em-up, besides maybe Maximum Carnage. They constantly move and circle and bob in and out, and they never come at you straight. Now, I love Streets of Rage, and I love Final Fight, but most of the characters come at you straight. Even the ones that are supposed to come at you from behind come at you in a predictable pattern. These guys just move all over the place. And the game moves so fast that you need to be able to react to their erratic movements very quickly. Oh, we just got a baseball bat. The baseball bat just greatly extends our range, basically. That's all it's good for, but that's a lot, honestly. The biggest issue, aside from the fact that you'll get punched in the back with using our normal punches, is that the enemy often has a greater range than we do with their melee. So if you come in here with the Streets of Rage, Final Fight, or really any other beat-em-up school of design where it's all about range and you need to play the range game and you need to make good use of your basic combos to the best of their ability, no. Now, moving around your enemies in those games is important too, but moving around your enemies in this game is the game. Your basic punch is almost useless except in very specific scenarios. And unlike Streets of Rage, there's no way to counter an enemy attack or counter someone who's trying to attack you. You either get the hell out of the way or you get hit. That's all there is to it. In Streets of Rage, you had special techniques that were specifically meant for interrupting enemy attacks, and some bosses built entirely around using those. But here it's all bob and weave all the time. In order to defeat your enemies, you have to learn to move like they do. I think we're near the very end of the level, and like I said, this was a rather long level, wasn't it? Especially when you consider that it does not end in a boss battle. There are boss battles, but I believe they're every second stage. So this is something of a long game, over an hour long in fact. It is rather repetitious, but it's also fairly entertaining throughout, mostly because of the hit sounds, the unique grab mechanics, and, well, the fact that you need to pay constant attention. If your attention wavers for even a few seconds, then oh, half your life is gone and you're left wondering where exactly it went. These guys with striped shirts, we haven't talked about them yet. They have a much better range than we do, and they love to charge across the entire screen at us or hop at us like madmen. The solution? Just grab them. Just move around them and grab them. All their attacks are centered on going straight forward. So if you flank them, they have no choice but to lose. So I think that was a pretty decent look at Iron Commando for the SNES. It's actually deceptively difficult, assuming I made it look easy in this video. If I didn't, then maybe the point got across. But yeah, I think that was a decent look, and thank you for watching, and if you want to play it for yourself, I recommend the European one. So that's it, and I'll see you guys next time. No, I'm fucking with you. We have to see what the bosses are like, come on. Say hello to Big Tom. Big Tom loves knives. He loves them a whole lot. He has two notable attacks. A basic slash and a sliding slash where he uses both his knives at once. He can also throw his knife at you, but avoiding that is a simple matter of moving up or down. Unlike most of the basic enemies, you can't really move around him to grab him unless he already used an attack and he's currently in his cooldown time. There's a brief period immediately after he uses an attack where he's vulnerable to be grabbed, but I do mean a very brief period. The winning strategy here usually is to knock him over with your jump kick, and then wait on top of him so you can grab him and pound him down again. But of course, Big Tom's biggest weakness is his own knives. You run up to him and slash him with a knife, he has no idea what the fuck to do about it. Unfortunately, knives don't last very long. All of the bosses in this game, and really all of Arcade Zone's work, even when they turned into Toka, are very, difficult. They have, well, I shouldn't say notoriously because they're not very well known, but they have very, very difficult boss battles across any game they create. And this isn't because of any real cheapness, but it's because of an attempt to make the boss fights feel more organic, I feel. For example, in a lot of beat-em-up boss fights, it's as simple as you know the pattern, you know how to hit him and where, and that's it. But it doesn't really work that way with Arcade Zone or Toka's games. All of their boss fights tend to feel more like fights because there's no clear-cut solution or one way to achieve victory that's objectively better than the others. And this used to immensely frustrate me, because the thing I liked about beat-em-ups is how game-like and puzzle-like they were, how after you figured out a boss, or figured out a game, it was as simple as, well, as putting a jigsaw puzzle together. But I can also appreciate what Toka and Arcade Zone were going for a lot better now. Now that I know them better, and I understand how passionate they were about what they did.